It's the FarmBoys podcast, part 2 of our talk with former airborne paratrooper and now part 2, his wife, Supply Sergeant Georgie. So you're training our own U.S. military like, hey, we're the bad guys. We're more experienced than you. We know stuff you don't know. Come and get some.
Georgie Greenwell. 2 combat zones, two branches of service, 2 kids, cat, dog later, life.
What branches of service?
I was in the Air Force the first time, and I served from 89 to 91. I was in Panama for the invasion and everything else in 89. I was an A1C, which is an E3. I didn't have very high rank when I left the Air Force, but being in Panama and in the combat zone, I did have 2 levels of ribbons from the Air Force. My job, the supply sergeant.
Supply sergeant. Okay.
Supply sergeant.
Now, sergeant infers that you have people below you.
Yes.
Okay.
How big was your section?
I had 8 soldiers underneath me.
One thing that Logan has not heard yet, Mike, tell us about your Army directive, whatever, orders to go play the war games. And I think we're going to have some questions based off that. Just kind of explain it briefly, and then let's rock and roll into it.
When I got those orders to go to the Joint Readiness Training Center, the JRTC, I knew nothing about it. I had never even heard of it before. I had never even, been privy to it. It wasn't exactly a new concept, but it's been around for just a little bit. So I got there and immediately it's like throwing you right into the mix. Matter of fact, I got there about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, went over to the battalion headquarters to sign in, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, be out here in 45 minutes with all your gear." And I'm like, okay. The battalion's already on rotation. So boom, get there, van picks me up, drives me 2.5 hours to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, which is an old
on the border.
Yeah, it was right on the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas, and that's where we did all of our training missions. It was out of that post. It was an old World War II post. The World War II barracks were still there. Matter of fact, I got to sleep in Elvis's bunk. Everyone rotated so that way, because that's where he went through basic training at was Fort Chaffee. Get there, and I immediately get tossed into the mix and told what our mission focus is. And our mission focus is to help other units prepare to meet in low and mid intensity conflicts, wherever that is. In other words, Panama is a great example. Panama, we deploy a force to Panama. Or no, actually, Grenada is a better example. Grenada is an even better example. So island nation, we've got some Americans trapped on there. The political situation there has gone sideways. So we deploy the 82nd Airborne in. Okay. They meet resistance. Some of that was Cuban. The rest was part of the Grenada government. But what we were replicating were the Cubans and the Grenada government, the bad guys. That's what we represented. So we would wear everything from jungle uniforms. We would occasionally put on Soviet wool uniforms, carry an AK-47. Usually we carried M16s during the training. But our sole focus was to get in there, and we were the indigenous people, essentially. We were the indigenous forces. So this was a unit coming from far away, coming into our AO that we knew very well. This was our backyard. So we were able to have those advantages that a force coming into the area would not. We knew where you could cross this river or creek. We knew if you were on this side of White Oak Ridge, it was much better than being on the other side because of weather, winds, and things like that. So
you're training our own U.S. military like, hey, we're the bad guys. We're more experienced than you. We know stuff you don't know. Come and get some.
But that's reality. That is the best way you can train. Is you've got to train like you fight. I mean, that's all there is to it. I'm sorry, but like I said, that girl, she was complaining about being short and couldn't walk through the snow or whatever else, and I just told her to shut up and keep going, because it's like, if I can do this, you can do this situation.
Our unofficial moniker was the most hated unit in the United States Army, because our success rate was so high.
Take us from when you started. Okay, you get in your stuff. Hey, 45 minutes, get in there. Tell us about it. Whatever you can tell us about it. I think it's fun to hear, and I think people will love to hear it.
I got one question. Are you using like airsoft guns or something?
No.
It's called Miles Gear.
Yeah, Miles Gear's multiple integrated laser engagement system. It's basically laser tag. So each soldier wears a harness on their chest and a halo on their helmet. There's a device that goes on the end of the rifle, and you use blank rounds.
Yep.
So you're using blank ammunition that every time that rifle fires, it sends out a laser beam.
And the laser beam has to hit one of our sensors.
Yeah.
And when it hits the sensors, you'll have this big loud buzz that goes off.
Oh, yeah.
You're dead.
It's really loud. So essentially what happens, you have to lay down. We have what's called observer controllers, or the referees that walk around. So if you're wounded, you have to lay down, and you've got a card that's in a sealed envelope in your pocket. Right. They come over, you take out your casualty card, they open it up, and they go, okay, so you have a sucking chest wound, or you have a wound to the right thigh, and you're either ambulatory or or you could be just KIA right out of the bat. For us, getting KIA, you were immediately removed from the battlefield, and you didn't get to go back. For the blue forces, which we called, we were op for the opposing force. For the blue forces, if they had to remove a soldier from the battlefield, they could get somebody backfilled to them eventually. So they had the advantage of numbers, but like I said, we had so many advantages of knowing the terrain, knowing the just the situation out there, and also being very unconventional in the way we approached a lot of our training.
How many soldiers are out there at one time?
That's the fun part, because
she actually got to participate in the training from the Blue Force side.
Yeah. So it's not just personnel. We're looking at tanks. We're talking helicopters. They've all got this Miles Gear equipment on them, so they can all be blown up. We're talking, this is a huge strategic battlefield. I mean, it's literally a battlefield where everybody participates.
I think
hundreds of acres, or
230,000 acres, I think.
Yes.
And I think the largest rotation I ever took part in was, we had over 7,000 people on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Fort Chaffee, when you got to go to the Readiness Training Center, that's what it's called. You are being trained on going to a third world country, or a country out of the States that's going to have that advantage. And that's where you have to, think, like you said, he got to think out of the box, and didn't have an ROE, which is rules of engagement. He didn't have one because he was the bad guy. So he got to do whatever he needed to do, ambushes and all kinds of other things.
Yeah, we could do a lot of conventional.
So when it starts, it's going over multiple days. It's not like you go out, you find a bunch of people, and then at night you come in and y'all eat together.
No, 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and the majority of that 3 weeks you are in what we called in the box.
2 weeks.
Well, we would always deploy outside. We would always deploy before the Blue Force got out there.
Right.
So our rotations usually ended up being 2.5, almost 3 weeks in the field.
Right.
So I became a professional camper for quite a while.
For a year and a half.
Yeah, for a year and a half. And but it's just one of those things where it made me become a much better soldier by being on that opposite side. And also, you can follow doctrine all you want, but situation dictates. No plane ever survives the first shot being fired. There's no way you can plan for every situation or scenario.
Yeah.
So tell us about a time you guys won and you guys lost. Like, what's the most memorable time when you just whooped their tails, and then maybe they came in and, oh wow, how'd they do that?
Okay, so this rotation was pretty unusual. It was the first time we ever encountered what was called LLVI, or a low-level voice intercept. One of our security procedures is supposed to be not doing radio communications where your patrol base is. You're supposed to leave the patrol base, make your radio transmission, make it short, make it sweet, and then you can go back to your patrol base. We screwed up. We screwed up horribly because we'd never been called out on it. And they called us out that rotation because they brought in this, what I said before, low-level voice intercept, LLVI. Basically what it is, it's a series of radio receivers that they put on high points, all the high points they can. As soon as they pick up a radio transmission, boom, all they're doing is they're triangulating your exact position.
Exactly.
So we're in the patrol base. I was not squad leader yet. I was one of the team leaders, but we weren't making our radio guy go out and do the comms outside of the patrol base. He was doing them inside. And before we knew it, we had an entire platoon against our squad. My squad of 8 guys.
8 guys. Yeah.
How big's a platoon?
You're talking
45.
80,
Oh,
75, 80.
not in the aviation.
No, not in the aviation.
Not in the aviation. We only have
Infantry.
45.
You're talking about 75, 80 soldiers coming in. It was a 10-to-1 ratio, essentially, against us. The funny thing is we didn't lose a single person. And then engagement, because my squad leader realized the gravity of the situation.
Take us through. They find you out. How did you know they found you? Take us through the whole thing.
Oh, when the fire initiated, as soon as they saw some of us without taking their time, they were just doing a sweep. They were just rolling right down the side of the ridge, and they were just going to engage us no matter what. So they started sporadic gunfire, and that told us, oh crap, all right, we've been found. My squad leader was very, very prescient, and he realized the volume of fire that was coming from the opposite direction was way too big for us to handle. So he immediately Charlie Sheened. We used that code word for CS gas. So he was screaming, Charlie Sheen, and that told everybody, you better be feet, because we didn't carry protective masks. The enemy did.
Yeah.
The blue forces had to carry the gas masks. We didn't carry them out in the field because generally we probably wouldn't have them anyway. But we did have the CS gas. So he popped CS and threw it towards the enemy. And so we started, and we knew we already had an alternate patrol base set up. Everyone knew where it was. So we all started beating feet to it, except for one guy. I'm trying to remember his full name. We always just called him K-Man. And his nickname should have been Caveman, but it was K-Man. K-Man was immune to CS. I don't know what it was. That kid.
It's not very common.
It's not very common, but he could walk through a CS gas and just be like, whatever. And so that was part of our tactics, was because the second that gas went, their instincts kicked in. Gas, I got to put them on protective masks. So they're basically, putting their weapons down, trying to mask up. That's when K-Man goes running right through their lines. He's got a squad automatic weapon called a SAW. It's a 5.56 millimeter weapon, and he's just zapping. He's just running right through, and then he runs right back out again.
And all the sensors are going off and everything else and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like laser tag. Like Logan had said, it is like a laser tag, but it is on a large scale.
So we didn't lose anyone, but we lost every bit of our equipment.
Yeah,
we had all of our rucksacks.
They snag everything when you play the games.
Yeah, all of our rucksacks, our sleeping bags, or you name it. You had your personal weapon, you had your load-bearing equipment, your helmet, and actually we didn't normally wear helmets. We just wore boonie caps. But
there's more to the story, if I remember right. Didn't you come across gear?
Yes. Yeah. So we still have a mission to perform. So we're like, all right, well, let's keep on moving, because moving was preferable to freezing, because like I said, we lost all of our gear. So we're going back up the ridge on the opposite side, and we find a flat level spot, and lo and behold, there's a whole lot of rucksacks just lined up in rows. This is awesome, because we didn't have food. We had nothing. So
this is real life. It's cold outside. You don't have blankets. You don't have jackets.
Yeah.
This is real life.
Yeah, real life. And so obviously we found a bunch of their equipment. We have to radio it in. We have to radio it in because an observer controller has to be there for us to start pulling their equipment apart. So the observer controller, which they're never more than 5 minutes away.
Yeah, they're not far.
He comes down. He's like, "Oh boy, you guys are going to have fun, aren't you?" We're like, "Yep." So we pull all the cold weather gear we need, all the ammunition, all the food, and we're like, okay. So we take the rest of the rucksacks. We can't carry it all. We put them in a big pile, and then we tell him, "All right, we've just put a white phosphorus grenade on top."
It was a flag or what? It was showing that this is all dead equipment.
Yeah, and so when they got back to all their equipment,
they couldn't have it.
They couldn't use it.
Couldn't use it.
So it was like, sorry guys. So at that point,
that's so awesome.
So we're kind of restock. We're like, yeah, this is all right. The problem is we were still, I mean, they were very aggressive that rotation. I mean, we were getting smacked around really, really good. By that point, this was towards the end of the rotation. We were what's called red face. In other words, it's just on. Okay, you engage the enemy no matter what. And we're in that portion, and our platoon has been hit so hard that we actually have to take the 3 squads that's in our platoon and actually consolidate to make one full squad. Cool. So yeah, so we'd been whittled down pretty well by them, and that was the worst I had ever seen it. Again, to our advantage, it was the worst rotation, and it was the best rotation, because when we took their rucksacks, we also got hold of their radios, and we also were able to listen in to their radio transmissions. So now we have an advantage of, they kept talking about the flagpole. There's only one flagpole out in the training area itself. And it used to be in front of an old building. The building's long gone, but the flagpole is still there. So they kept talking about being at the flagpole. They'll bring the company in. Also, we had really bad weather coming in, sleet, rain. It was cold. So we were, and they made the call. They were like, we're going to ground. Everyone get in your shelters, stay warm. Yeah. We're not going to risk anyone's lives. You know, this is training, and that's a good call by a commander. The problem was we were still pretty sore over our drubbing that I think it was 9 or 10 of us, went up to the top of the ridge and swept down and started engaging that company. And we were using standard infantry tactics better than they were. Your 3 tenets are shoot, move, and communicate. Okay. So you're firing, you're moving, because you never want to be in the same position twice unless you have to be. You're moving and you're communicating. Now, a lot of people think it's like, all right, you got to be quiet. Pow, pow, pow. All right, be quiet. But you're making the biggest noise ever. Okay. That's not how it works.
They're not going to hear you anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So you're communicating. It's like, as a squad leader, it's like, hey, over there, right there. Go, you're 2 o'clock. Go, do it. You know, you're yelling at your guys. They're performing their mission, and working together. We made the 9-10 of us made that company 80% combat ineffective. It was insane. Wow. When we got back and the commander came down to talk to us, and he was like, okay, so who all was there? And my platoon sergeant was there, and our LT had been killed. I mean, not literally, but in the game. My platoon sergeant, myself, I was the only other NCO, and the rest were just E4 and below. So he's like, all right, I need you 2 guys. They have requested a personal after-action review from you guys. This commander wants to speak to you personally. So we went, they flew us to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and we're wearing our OP4 uniforms, and we go in and they're having their after action review. It wasn't a company after action review. It was a battalion after action review. So their battalion commander was there. And this company commander was so hot. I mean, he was so mad that what had occurred that he just didn't believe it. He was like, they're cheating. I was like, nope, sir.
We've got the observer right here. He tell you.
Yeah. The OCs were out there. You know, if it would take away from the training if we cheated.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not saying people never cheated out there, didn't take their battery out or whatever, their harness, or put a dead battery in instead of a live one. But the OCs were always walking around with what they called the God gun and checking your harness to see if it was actually active or not. So it was just illustrative of, you know what, take the L and learn from it. Don't take the L and blame someone else for your mistakes. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned in the military was, you know what, own it. Own what you did wrong. Because if you don't, it'll continue to haunt you forever.
Well, that's a good suggestion for life.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You talked about in the war games how people got injured or died almost each round. Can you talk about that? I just want people to understand that are listening to this. Like, this is real life. That's why I kept saying that. Like, this is you're not actually shooting at people or killing people, but things happen to prepare for war.
So two of the biggest events that happened while I was there is we had more than one. We had a few aircraft crashes during the time that I was there. And I'm not ever sure I've ever told you this one. I may have. So we were in what's called the defense. So during the defense, you set up a static defensive position, the concertina barbed wire in front, the whole 9 yards. That's the Blue Force. They set up in a static defensive position. Our job at that point, we've gotten a hold of armored vehicles, Soviet BMPs. We used a visually modified US M113 tracked vehicle. It looked like a BMP, but in reality, it was a 113. So what we would do is we would set up and we would do an assault against their fixed defensive position. During this rotation, we were actually aggressing. We did also a lot of other nations would come in. We trained with the French, the Germans. This particular rotation happened to be the Canadians. They were set up in their defensive position. We were rolling in and attacking. Now, standard military doctrine is if you come up against a wire obstacle, you're supposed to stop, dismount, send a squad forward to cut that wire obstacle so that way your tracked vehicle can get through. This is part of the part where we didn't operate doctrinally. We just barreled right through it. I mean, we just rolled right through the concertina wire and just kept on barreling forward no matter what.
So wait, you're in a vehicle then?
Yeah. We're in an armored vehicle.
Okay.
We're in an armored vehicle, 50 caliber machine gun on top, and a whole bunch of soldiers inside with individual weapons. So I don't know what was going through this guy's head. Well, go ahead.
It just comes to my mind that like Zero Dark 30, the guy who pulls up, and I mean, he had a death wish. He's a suicide bomber. That's real life. People don't care if they say, you know what, I'm going to die for this. They're going to go through that wire. They're going to go through anything like that, right? Like this is real life.
That's correct.
Exactly. But standard U.S. doctrine, when you roll up on a wire, because we were still operating from the premise of the Cold War at that point. This is early 90s. We had that Cold War methodology in our brains that was what we were trying to, that was one of the biggest focuses of what we were trying to do was kick that mentality out of people's brains. Yeah. So by just rolling through that wire, it was, the forces on the other side, it was always the same response. Utter shock and disbelief. They would just be like, whoa, they're not supposed to do that. It's like, yeah, guess what?
This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, the enemy is going to do this. Well, I don't know what was going through the soldier's head. They were all in fighting positions. In other words, dug in positions that were in the ground. Some individuals, some were bunkers, things like that. Now, we do have to take as much care as possible. You don't want to run over an individual's fighting position that could hurt or kill them. So it wasn't a free for all, but it was still pretty dangerous. Well, this kid got up out of his fighting position and just took off running. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's the shock. He was scared or what. But one of the other tracks, when they had gone through the concertina wire, they were pulling like a huge V of this barbed wire behind them. Oh, yeah. Caught the kid by the leg. He ended up getting drugged. When I say death by 1,000 cuts, I mean, thankfully he did not die.
No, but still.
But he had cuts over his entire body.
They had to shut down the.
Yeah, we had to shut down training. We had to shut down training because, at that point, everyone thought that this kid's not going to live. This kid's not going to live because this was. It was absolutely bonkers the way that occurred. But it was just it was one of those lessons. It's like, yeah, you're in training, but training is dangerous inherently.
Wow. Okay, and Georgie, you got to participate in this. And what did you say you were able to do at the War Games?
Actually, my job in the War Games was to make sure everybody had their harnesses and all the other stuff and the batteries. So I had to supply my battalion with all of it. I mean, I signed out all of the equipment from Fort Chaffee, so I was responsible for all of it to get turned back in. So my job was pretty much being the tough cookie and telling them, hey, that's not clean. You have to go clean that first and then bring it back to me. Kind of a situation on top of. But
she actually had to leave early because she got injured.
I did. We were out. It was our first night in the field. We convoyed out in the operation area, and I was driving a deuce and a half truck with a trailer. I was sitting on the tongue of the trailer, getting ready to step down, and it was what's it called? Light noise discipline.
Noise light discipline.
Yeah. So we all had to be quiet. So I put my foot on the ground to step off because, of course, I'm short. So I'm sitting on the tongue. I'm like, okay, put my foot down. All right. So I just leaned off of it, and my foot was on a rock, and I twisted my ankle inwards so bad that it turned purple and black and all kinds of other good stuff. So they put me on a cot with bags of ice. The medics did put me on the cot in that area, and of course I was barking orders and making sure people were doing what they're supposed to be doing. But the sergeant major and Colonel Allen and the first sergeant all came over to me, and we had a medic that was literally a doctor on the civilian side and plus the military side. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if it's broken or not. She needs to really go in. And so I had to leave that area in the back of an Army ambulance to go to a local hospital, wait for my foot to quit being so swollen so they could take x-rays of it and everything else.
Was it great?
It was a grade 3 sprain. So these are just like, his was way more traumatic than mine was.
Sure, but
when I went back and we had everything all turned in, I couldn't drive my truck home because we were in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and we had to drive it back to Illinois. I couldn't drive it because it's a stick shift, and it was my left ankle. So there was no way I was driving my truck home. So somebody else had to drive the truck home, but Colonel Allen and Major Becker flew me, and like 5 or 6 other people had to fly home early from that training exercise and stuff. So Michael met me with crutches on the flight line.
Which I was like, why did they not give you crutches?
They did crutches, but I had to give it back to them.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So he had to meet me at the helicopter with crutches so I could get back.
That's nice. That's nice though. So I have one last question, and this is for you, Georgie. And maybe it never happened, but I think at least one of the questions that's always come to my mind is, did you have to deal with, and this is because the news fills my brain with it, but did you ever have to deal with sexism when you're having authority tell you something, or you giving authority to a male or something, even a female? You know, it's like, well, I'm not going to listen to a woman, or, oh, that's a guy, I'm not going to listen to a woman. Whatever it was, did you ever experience that in the military?
Yes, because I was a section leader, and there's not a lot of female section leaders, number one. Number two, the reason being was, of course, they didn't think I knew what I was doing because I am a female and a short female.
She's talking about one person in particular.
No, I have a couple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a few pilots that thought they knew my job better than I did. Pilots and officers are put on a pedestal in the military, that they do no wrong. Everything they say has to be followed and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. So they did have a rub with me only because when they thought they were right, I could pull out the regulation for the Army and say, look, this is the reason why you can't do what you want to do. This is it, because this is my job, and I'm not losing my job because I've done something wrong.
Professionalism.
Yep. And so, but like I said, I did have those guys who just really just couldn't stand me because I knew what I was doing. I knew how to do my job, and they just thought I wasn't doing it the right way. So yeah, I did have a few of those, but I did have their commanders actually come to me and say, did you have a problem with one of my pilots? You know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, sir. I said, you know what? It's been a long day. You're going to have to be a lot more specific than that. You're going to have to tell me a name or something, you know? And he said, well, it was Chief so-and-so. I said, oh, I said, sir, that was a tiny issue. I took care of it right there in my office. I said, why? What happened? What's going on? Somebody that was standing in line waiting to get something from my office heard the whole conversation, and he
for that person.
And he went straight to his commander and told his commander. And it's like, I took care of it. It was done and over with. But he told me, he says, you have one problem with any of my pilots, you come tell me. I will take care of that personally. I was like, okay. He says, you have a huge job and you do not need to be harassed by somebody in my company. And I was like, okay, sure. I appreciated that. So
if we have time, I want to tell you one quick story.
Yeah.
So she had a soldier, and that soldier was a kid that I did not want to go to Iraq with her. He did not like this little kid. He was a child in larger form, and I did not want that kid to plan Iraq with her. And I would constantly, I'd be after that kid. I'd be like, do push-ups. Well, what? I don't care. There is no why. Do push-ups. You better pull your head out of your fourth point of contact, son, because you're going over there and you're going to have to be side by side with the best thing in my life. And you better man up. He gave her problems. There was corrective actions and things like that. I never ever expected this kid to ever go anywhere in the military because he was just.
We thought he would only do his 4 years and get out. Because
he was just that. Well, I was working at the Army Research Lab
in Maryland.
She gets a phone call, and it's this soldier. And hey, I'm getting promoted to E7, Sergeant First Class.
Outranking me. I
want you to come pin
my E7
on. And so we went down to Fort Belvoir. Fort Belvoir. He was doing a mission there for the actually dignitary transportation with helicopters. He was a crew chief now on a Black Hawk helicopter.
He went from supply to crew chief.
So. So she got to pin his E7 on, and that was that's a testament to leadership and to professionalism and just holding people to a standard. That's it.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there?
Sure.
Just for a minute. So I just finished a book a few days ago, and it's a great book. I would recommend it to anybody, but it's called The Miracle of Freedom by Ted Stewart. And so here's one of the things, even for me, like I feel like I love history. I love, I love national history. I love world history. I love reading about how, our country gained its independence. And I think the other thing too, I grew up with a grandfather that served in World War II. So one of my favorite things was to go to his house and he'd tell me stories from the war. And I think one of the biggest losses to our country is that generation of World War II veterans, because I told my dad this just yesterday. I said, as they've gone on, we lose a perspective that I think is very important. It's that, hey, if somebody's not willing to stand up for what is right, then we lose freedom. And anyways, this book is incredible. At the beginning of the book, it's I think they're basing it on Christian beliefs. So if the world started with Adam and Eve, but their estimate is there's been 110 billion people that have ever lived on the earth. Of that 110 billion people, their estimates through all these studies, and it's not him, they got the information from, I think, a group that, has done some in-depth studies, that only about 5 billion people have ever lived with real freedom. Yes. So for us to live in the United States of America, to experience the freedoms that we have that allows us to complain and nitpick and get frustrated about our government and all these different things, we're less than 5% of a group that has ever existed in this world. And at the end of the book, it started talking, a professor from Yale made a comment about, he was asked about slavery and, how could there be, slavery? And he said something like, the real question is not about slavery. It's how could freedom exist in the way that it exists today, because this is something that is basically very, very rare and unseen throughout all of world history. It is not common for people to be free. It's not common for people to be able to choose what they want to do with their lives and who they want to work for and what they want to do. What is common is slavery. And slavery's existed so I think part of the issue is people do not realize how good we have it and how unique it is for us to live in a country like this.
No one understands what freedom really is, or they don't have the gratitude for it unless you've left the country, unless you've traveled overseas and you've seen the conditions that people live in or the things that they go through and stuff like that. People here in the States are spoiled rotten if you've not been overseas. And that's my perspective on it, because until you've seen what people, surviving have to go through just to make ends meet or to feed their families and things like that. Here, yes, we complain a lot, but we're allowed to. I mean, look at China. Heaven forbid if you say one word out of the wrong direction, you may not see the family the rest of the time. So, I mean, it has been going on for a lot of years. I mean, look at the Egyptians, look at all of the ancient history and everything else. People have been slaves for a very, very long time. And it's like, this is why people today, when I say people today, young people today should really go overseas, take a travel, go to some of these countries, and then come back and you will appreciate all the things that you have here.
And this is coming from somebody who served her country in not only Panama, where we met, but Nicaragua, Iraq, Iceland, where else? El Salvador.
So let's jump into that with Georgie here. So I'm gonna kind of end the freedom talk and just say we were censored last podcast from YouTube because we talked about a certain individual that we will call an apprentice that we all know as Orange.
Yes.
To say that name, I had to take that off so that we could be searched and found and we could do what we wanted.
Okay. Georgie Greenwell, formerly Orion was my maiden name, before I married my husband. Two combat zones, two branches of service, 2 kids, cat, dog later, life.
What branches of service?
I was in the Air Force the first time, and I served from 89 to 91. Okay. And I graduated in May of 89. By December 5th, I was in Panama for the invasion and everything else in 89. So on your mark, set, run kind of a situation when you graduate from high school. So I said I wanted to travel. I joined the Air Force, and they sent me south. So, but I did have 2 years of Spanish in high school, so I'm not sure if they took that into consideration or not. But it's a different Spanish down there. But I figured it out. So
what about D.I. Costello?
Who?
Your drill sergeant.
Oh, my drill sergeant. Oh, my female drill sergeant was a redhead. Costello was her last name, and she was mean as a snake. But that's okay, because that was her job. That was her job, is to deflate us because, we're graduates and from high school and blah, blah, blah. But it was their job to break us down and say, hey, you are nothing until I make you what you're supposed to be. So
you went through boot camp in the Air Force.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously before Panama, you had to go to boot camp, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess you're not a very big woman in stature. What are you, about 5 foot?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got a 5 foot cute little blondie coming in from high school, going to basic training at the Air Force. So you told us that your drill sergeant there was a female. So was the entire squad female back in that time, I'm assuming?
Absolutely. There's 45 of us.
Okay. So then what was your experience? I guess give us some of your experience of some new young girl going to boot camp saying, hey, the world is mine, and you go in there and I'm sure it's a big shock.
Oh, absolutely. It was my first time being on an airplane to fly to San Antonio, Texas. I'd never been on a plane or anything. So everything was a shock. Everything was new. I tried to be the wallflower because when they dropped us off from the bus to where we were on basic training, it was 2:00 in the morning. So there was like 5 of us who woke up the drill sergeant. So that didn't go over very well at all. So, yeah, we got yelled at, pick up the bag, put down the bags, all the other good fun stuff and everything else. So yeah, it took a week before we had 45 females to even start basic training. So we were there a week in our civilian clothes until we had enough females. And then they marched us down and we got our uniforms and all the other stuff and everything else. So that was August of '89.
What was the most difficult aspect of your training?
Probably just being short. Honestly, that would be the only thing, because an M16, if I strap it on my back, it goes from about my shoulder blade to almost my ankles. So the M16 is a full size rifle. It's not the lovely little M4 where the buttstock, collapses or any of that other nice stuff. I had the full size M16.
So have you and Michael compared basic training stories?
Oh, we've told each other stories over the years. Yeah.
Air Force basic training was easy. You only had to run 1.5 miles. You didn't have to run 2 miles like you do in the Army. They didn't really test us on push-ups and setups or nothing like that. It was mostly just the run. So like I said, the Air Force basic training was much easier than the Army basic training. So,
Georgie, you started with 45. How many made it through basic training?
I think we only had 30 by the time it was over with. And it was multiple things: not passing the PT test, not passing mentally, not passing injuries and things like that and stuff. Because this is in August and we literally had to do, in San Antonio, Texas in August, they have like red flags. In other words, the heat index is so high that they let you unblouse your pants around your ankles and stuff and things like that. And they don't march you like in formation. You just kind of straggle or wherever you're going and things like that. We had a few heat casualties, but that's just because they didn't drink water. I mean, if you follow all the instructions that they tell you to do, to me, it was easy. And I only say that because I already had the background of being a tomboy anyway. So I already knew how to shoot. I already know how to change the oil in a car. I'm coming from that background. I'm not just the short little blonde female that can't do anything situation. So that's probably why I thought it was easy compared to other females.
And one thing to add to that, a lot of people mistake the relationship between the drill sergeant and the trainee as an adversarial relationship. It is not. The drill sergeant has to establish supreme authority right out of the gate, because you're about to do things that are inherently dangerous. Inherently dangerous.
Yeah.
And if you don't listen to the instructions to a T, you'll end up getting hurt, having an issue. Yep. So it was so easy as a trainee myself of looking at that drill sergeant like, that guy just freaking hates me. He hates my guts. But he didn't. He didn't hate my guts. I ran into him years later out on one of our mock battles at the Joint Readiness Training Center. I ran right into him. I was like, drill sergeant. I immediately went to parade rest. And I was like, and I'm out there trying to be the bad guy. And he was one of the observer controllers, one of the referees. And it was just hilarious, just the way, he was like, hey, calm down, troop. He was like, Greenwell, oh my gosh. It'd been years. I mean, it'd been 6 years since I'd seen him. And he still remembered me out of his memory. So those drill sergeants, they are there to basically
make you a soldier,
make a piece of clay into a soldier. And to do that, there's a lot of things that have to be done. So
Georgie, when you left the Air Force, what was your rank, and did you have to do basic training for the Army?
I was an A1C, which is an E3. I didn't have very high rank when I left the Air Force, but being in Panama and in the combat zone, I did have 2 levels of ribbons from the Air Force. So because you get the expeditionary, you had like I said, basic training and all kinds of other stuff too. And then what was the other question you said? You asked me. Oh, no, I did not. I did not have to go back through basic training because it was under 10 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At the time, which was pre 9/11, it was 99.
It was 99 when I got in the
At
Army.
the time, the regs at that time said as long as you'd gone through basic training within the last 10 years, you wouldn't have to repeat it. And so she was given a waiver.
Yeah. And also, my job in the Air Force was, I was a pallet pusher. I know that sounds weird, but the cargo planes, we would literally build up silver pallets and shrink wrap them and everything for cargo. And then they would put it on a K-loader machine. And we literally, there's rollers on it and there's rollers in the floor of an aircraft. And you literally would push the pallet on and put them where the loadmaster had them, because you had to weigh them in the certain weights on go in certain areas of the airframe.
And it's a lot more technical than you think. She's kind of glossing over it a little bit. Building the pallets themselves with whatever you put on it. Number one, there's restrictions to what you can put on that pallet. Number two, there's restrictions of where you can put stuff on that pallet. The pallet has to be perfectly balanced. And then you also have to have the knowledge of how that aircraft's interior is. So, okay, you've got a pallet weighing this much in this position. That means, and you've got 3 other pallets to fit in there. Well, we're going to need this pallet over here because that balances the aircraft out. Okay. So there's a little more. She's not giving herself due credit, but yeah, it was a technical job, but it's one of those jobs that the military absolutely relies on.
That and forklift driver. Also, I drove the staircase truck because we did passengers and put them on military airframe too, and also any kind of civilian airframe that came in. Like we had the peace conference go on. I think it was in 90. Is it 90 or 91? Anyways, one of those 2 years, and they brought in the C5s. Well, they called me. They said, okay, you have the rest of the day off because these airframe are going to be coming in like at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, okay. So, but they had 2 C5s and they were loaded with limousines for the peace conference. Wow. So I took the staircase truck out and let people get off the C5.
So to give someone a kind of a preview of what a C5, what it can hold. Think of a football field and then they construct an aircraft around it.
It's 100 yards.
Yeah, it's 100 yards that's 100 yards of space on the deck inside that aircraft that you can just put equipment. Yeah, huge. It's enormous.
So did you do anything else in combat while in the Air Force, or did you immediately, you go Panama, Air Force, and then I go to Army? Actually, when we were there in Panama, my job was pretty much before everything hit the fan is we were putting families out. The families had to evacuate Panama, the ones that were there on the Air Force base and the Army base. And so they would show up the passenger terminal, and that was our job, is to make sure we could fit them and their bags on a plane to get out of the country. So I got there on the 5th. Everything hit the fan the night of the 19th. And so that whole entire time, that's all we did was pushing people out on every aircraft we could have. We were putting them out. And the thing is, though, in a military aircraft, they don't have, your nice bucket seats for a plane when you fly in. They're just web seats. So you pretty much, your butt is the only thing that fits in them. So Panama gets over, or did you transfer to the Army during Panama?
No, Panama was over.
Okay.
I was sent to Washington State for my next assignment. They sent my husband to Arkansas.
So yeah, here's the infinite wisdom of the military. So she comes down on orders, and her orders are for McCord Air Force Base, which is right next to Fort Lewis, Washington. So we had filed for the Joint Married Couples Program. So that way we would go to places together. So I'm like, I'm going to Fort Lewis, Washington. Outstanding. I get my orders. I'm going to Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas.
Yes.
So did she join the Army to be able to come to you then?
No. At that point, she was in Washington State. I was in Arkansas, and she was pregnant with our son Ryan. Right. And she went to her chain of command and basically said, "Listen, this is wrong." I tried matter of fact, I flew to Washington and I went to the headquarters there on Fort Lewis, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to sign in." And they were like, "Let me see your orders." And so I'm like, "Well, my orders say this," and they instantly they went,
Nope.
Normally, you could probably do that if you have a good enough justification, which I did. The problem is I was under DA, what they call DA selected, Department of the Army selected orders.
Right.
Yeah, so I was going to Little Rock no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah,
so when did you join the Army, Georgie?
99. I was out for a long time. I got out
for 8 years.
I was out for 8 years.
Oh.
So I was 27 or 28 when I joined the Army. So like I said, a husband, 2 kids, cat, dog later is when I joined the service again for the Army.
What rank did you enter the Army at then?
Same rank, E3.
Same rank, E3. And then let's skip to what conflicts did you attend while in the Army?
Iraq.
Okay. And
Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Yeah, Iraqi Freedom. OIF.
When you went over to Iraq, what was your position? What were you doing over in Iraq?
My job, the supply sergeant.
Supply sergeant. Okay.
Supply sergeant.
Now, sergeant infers that you have people below you.
Yes.
Okay.
How big was your section?
I had 8 soldiers underneath me.
And I'm taking it they weren't all females.
No.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's dive into that. You little 5'0" Georgie, are you carrying weapons? Are you in what kind of uniform are you wearing? And how do these guys? You get into it. Take some freedom here.
Where to start?
Well,
let me put it this way.
Start with your uniform. What did you wear on a daily basis there in Iraq? Yeah.
All right. T-shirt, desert pants, desert jacket, or it's a shirt. Body armor, front and back plates, helmet, boots, of course.
Never went anywhere without a weapon.
3-point sling on a rifle. I don't know if you guys know what a 3-point sling is.
No, but what kind of rifle did you carry?
Oh, M16.
M16. Now, this was when weapons of mass destruction?
No, you went 2004.
I wasn't there in 2004.
Yeah, so
it was after 9/11 when Bush said we're coming to get.
Yeah.
Okay, Saddam. Okay, cool. So take us through some of that. Let's get into that.
My job as a supply sergeant had many hats. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
Anywhere from ordering a pen to 55-gallon drums of oil to being in charge of the arms room, which is knowing the knowledge of in and out of taking weapons apart, putting them back together on the different types of weapons that we had, and also ordering ammo.
So her battalion was an aviation battalion.
Aviation battalion.
So it was Black Hawk helicopters and Chinook helicopters.
Yes. So anything between weapons to uniforms, that was our job, is pretty much to suit everybody. Everybody's sizes, everybody's body armor, helmet sizes, everything. That was our job, is to supply everybody with all of the equipment that they needed.
Okay, so this is in 2004. They're doing the lead up to deploy to Iraq. One of her chain of command comes by the supply room, and here she is shuffling through papers and writing everything down. And they're like, "Do you not have a computer?"
It was the colonel.
It was the colonel.
It was the colonel. It was Colonel Allen.
Yep.
Colonel
Do you not have a computer?
No, sir.
No, sir. Not. I'm like, this is 2004. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the very next day, I think you had a computer.
I had a computer and a printer and all kinds of lovely stuff after that.
Not only was she just a supply sergeant, a lot of people equate that for just a company. She was the battalion supply sergeant. She took care of the supplies for an entire battalion.
How many people are in a battalion?
325.
Wow. And you have 8 little helpers, not little, but you know what I mean. You have 8 helpers. You're little Georgie, and you're saying, "Hey, get your tail over there and get me that, boy."
Well, sort of. Yeah, I didn't say please. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Please was not in the vocabulary at all. So yeah, but that was the thing, though. When we did our lead up to even leave country, we had to go to all the different ranges. We had to fire at night. We had to fire during the day. Like I said, that was our job. That was my job, and my section's job is to take all of these companies and make sure everybody had uniforms, everybody had body armor, everybody had helmets, everybody had what they needed, boots, flight suits. That's a whole other can of worms. But yeah,
essentially get the right equipment to the right place at at the right time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
For whatever.
Yes.
Georgia, I was going to ask, and this we may have covered this last time with your husband, and of course Chris would know. But where did you grow up, and how did you decide that you wanted to go into the military after, like, right after high school?
I grew up in Kentucky. Don't hold it against me.
Are you a Kentucky fan?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, she's a UK fan.
UK, not global. Yeah, no, I grew up in Kentucky, and I knew that I wanted to travel, and I knew that I also wanted to have money for college and everything else. And that's pretty much why I decided to join the service. And
what did your mom and dad, were they supportive of you doing that?
I don't know how to answer that.
Well, and you can add,
the reason I say that is because I didn't live at home when I made that decision. I moved out on my 18th birthday. I did not live with my mom and dad when I made my decision. So
you were an independent. Sounds like you're an independent girl.
Yes. Yes,
yeah. I can speak from authority. There was great gnashing of the teeth when she enlisted. Her mother was not happy.
Well, I mean, I could imagine, right? Like, I have a daughter that's a freshman in high school, and I have another daughter that is a third grader, and then I have a son that's a sixth grader and a son that's 4. But I mean, I would imagine there would be concern. You're going into this crazy world, and anyways.
No, the reason my mom wasn't very happy about it is because the only exposure to the military that she had was people from Vietnam, and that's hard because they weren't appreciated or thanked or anything like that. So that's what her perspective of the military was, and I think that's why she had such a hard time with it. Plus, I'm the oldest, and I'm the first one to leave the house. So this is, I think, there was a lot of emotions, a lot of things that were going on. But I think I surprised her because I did well. I did well when I was in the service. So,
at what point, how long did it take your parents or your mom to kind of come around and say, "Oh, wow, like what you're doing is pretty incredible"?
Jiminy Christmas. Help me out on this one.
It took a while. It took a while.
I bet you
were you still in the service? Or were you
probably
out?
Not.
No.
Probably not.
No, it was between the Air Force and the Army, for sure. Yeah. But then when I joined the Army, she's like, "Why?"
Well, so let me ask you one more question. We can get off this. I'm just a little, for whatever reason, curious about it. Can you look back on your upbringing? Was there something that you were taught, or maybe a personal quality that you just innately have that was given to you from your parents that enabled you to was there a lesson or were there times growing up that stand out where you're like, "Hey, I'm going to serve in the military," or what helped you be able to do that?
I don't know.
Do you want me to answer this honestly?
Sure.
I wanted
away.
The HE double toothpicks out of Winchester, Kentucky.
Out. I was done. I was done with being there. I had to go. And it's like, I'd been there for so long, and it wasn't just that. It was like, I know there's more out there, and this was my way of going and seeing the world. I'm not, how do I say this? I'm not a representative of my family.
This is going to sound alien to a lot of people, but there were times when she was growing up that they didn't have electricity or water, that they had an outhouse.
Or things got shut off.
Or things that she came from a very, very challenging background. Let's just put it that way. So
part of that though, part of that probably made you tough, right?
I guess so. That's why I thought basic training was pretty easy for me, because I'm like, is this all this is? I got this. This is easy stuff. So but no, back to Iraq though. I'll be honest with you. If I hadn't had the experience from the Air Force and doing vehicles and being, let's do this now. There's no waiting around. We have to do this. I think that helped when I had to go to Iraq, because all of my soldiers underneath me had never been overseas ever. They had never been anywhere. And so there was one day before we left Peoria you. I set them all down in my office, and they're all looking around like, uh-oh, Sergeant Greenwell's serious. I had them all sitting there, and I'm like, all right, this is the deal. We are going overseas. We are not going to have cell phones. You're not going to be able to call your friends, do whatever you want to do. Right now, you need to look around in this room because this is your new family for the next year. If you see one of us, you don't have to come talk to me. You can talk to whoever you want to talk to. But if you see one of us having a really bad day, visit with them. Have a sit down, talk to them, and see what's going on. That is going to make a team better than me barking orders and being a nasty brat. Okay. So that was the best thing I think I could have told them. It's like, you don't have to talk to me. You can talk to anybody you want to talk to. But if you're having a bad day, you need to go talk to somebody. And they were like, holy moly, she's really serious about this. It's like, I'm not messing around. So
that's great leadership.
You two are a little bit more open than other veterans that I've spoken to, and I enjoy it. I love it. So please take that as a compliment. Speaking of danger, Georgie, you're in Iraq. Mike, you've been to places, Panama. Can you guys both talk about being in a dangerous situation? Number one, Georgie, you're carrying a rifle. You're in Iraq. I keep saying you're 5'0". You are, but I just want people to try to foresee you. You are tough. You're more inner tough than outward tough. Is that fair to say? So, being in combat, being shot at, shooting at somebody else. What does that feel like to you guys? I've been watching the Sean Ryan podcast a lot more lately, and we have a huge guest coming on in June or July of this year. I'll share it with you guys after the podcast. What's it like, Georgie? We always think of men being in battle. Number one, were you ever shot at? Did you ever had to pull your rifle on anything? Were you in danger? Mike, same with you. What is that feeling when you're having to squeeze off rounds, knowing that I might have to kill somebody, or I'm going to kill somebody to save my life? Whichever one of you want to go first. Okay,
I was
Georgie.
lucky. I was lucky enough. I did not have to fire my rifle at anybody, but I was driving. We had a 2-mile convoy that we drove from Kuwait all the way up to Balad, which is north of Baghdad. And that's where I was stationed at. So it was a 2-day convoy that we drove vehicles, big trucks. Deuce and Half truck was my truck. But that's how we actually got to Balad, LSA Anaconda. That's where I was. But the post or the military base I was on was called Mortaritaville. And the reason being is because when we got there on the 15th of March through the end of the year, we had 297 mortars come in on our post. Yes.
In the year she was there.
In less than a year that I was there. Yeah.
So that's maybe one a day.
A minimum. And they would hit the flight line, or we actually had 2 Deuce and Halves get blown up there about 100 yards from me when I was there.
Who's attacking you? Who's shooting at you?
It was like Al Qaeda. It was the resistance that was in Iraq at the time, but it was primarily funded by Iran and Al Qaeda. They used so we have something called the counterfire systems. Okay. So say an enemy has a mortar tube and they're out there and they're like, okay, it's 2:00 in the morning. Let's throw a few. So they start throwing rounds. The second that round leaves the tube, we have a radar system that picks that round up. And the computers inside that system go, okay, they do the reverse triangulation and tell the artillery guys, hey, here's where the bad guys are. And they immediately, within a matter of seconds, under a minute, we're sending rounds back over, hitting up, blowing them up. They got pretty inventive. Go ahead.
But the thing is they would set it, because we had a roaming guard. There was 2 fence lines, and it's just a chain link fence, and it's about 12 feet tall. But we had roaming guards that were going around the outside of the military base right there. But it'd be more than a mile out, and they would pack the tubes with ice, put the round in, and wait for the ice to melt.
And they would just walk away.
So, they got smart, and then, so it didn't matter if they did the counter deal or not. It was just how it was. But we did. That was the nickname. of our place was Mortar Reedaville, because we had that many mortars come in. And I was there from 04 to 05. So I was there from March 04 to February of 05.
Okay. Mike, what about you?
It's surreal. And every experience I had was surreal to a certain basis. Coming out of basic training and going to Panama, the advanced infantry training and jungle training and everything. You're always training. During peacetime, your training is your key, because you want it to be a matter of muscle memory, nothing else. Right. Okay, yeah, you do want the intelligence in there. Don't get me wrong, but react to contact. In other words, somebody react to an ambush. Someone ambushes you. You know what you have to automatically do. Your brain doesn't. You don't have to take those critical nanoseconds to think, I got to this. No, you want to automatically react. My experience in Panama was almost automatic reaction for days. And you get to a point, I can remember the first time I was truly terrified. Okay. We were coming in to the landing zone, and we'd done this for practice so many times.
What airframe?
It was a Black Hawk helicopter. We were coming into the landing zone, and I looked down, and I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with tracer rounds. Every so often in your magazine, every 3 to 4 rounds, you'll put what's called a tracer round. The tracer round basically has a small bit of phosphorus in the end of it,
and it's colored. It's got a red one,
so
or whatever color.
As it's going towards, it's a way during nighttime to be able to triangulate your fire. It's like, hey, I got him, and so that red streak right through. Now there's a good and bad to that, because now they know where you're shooting from. But tracer rounds are used for that purpose. Well, I'm looking down. United States military tracers are red.
Yeah.
I was looking down. Soviet ammunition's tracers are green, and I look down and I see a lot of green tracer. And that was that moment. That was that Kukumu. That was like, oof, this isn't cool. This is not right.
This is gonna happen.
And it was that was the realization. It was like, oh, this isn't training anymore. This isn't training. This is for real.
Did you parachute out of the Black Hawk?
No, we landed. Our mission was to take Fort Amador. Fort Amador was a joint United States Panamanian post at the time. Even though we had bad relations with them, that had been the deal for a very long time. So the problem was all we had really on Fort Amador were families. There was a golf course over there. Yeah. We landed on the golf course. We had to assault through the family housing and then start evacuating the families back, and then engage the Panamanian Defense Forces that were on the other side, the PDF. And it was just it was chaos. I mean, it's just utter chaos. I mean, it's what it is. But
so were you were obviously shooting back?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. There was, matter of fact, I saw a kid make one of the most insane, amazing shots that I've ever seen or ever will see the rest of my life. We were catching fire from this small window. I think it was a bathroom that was like on the second, third story up. And we were catching fire. There was somebody in there just sniping the heck out of us. And this kid had a 40 millimeter grenade launcher on the bottom of his weapon. Okay.
203.
So 40 millimeter round is about that big a round. The sergeant was like, knock it out. This kid went from a kneeling position behind a concrete barrier, rolled out, rolled back in. And by the time he got back to his position, that thing arced right through this window that was this big. And that was probably about 250 meters away, or 2.5 football fields away. It was amazing. I mean, just went right in. I was like, that kid deserves an award right there.
2.5 football fields away, the guy shoots a grenade launcher. He's got boom right up.
Yeah, and it's not a direct fire weapon. It's not, you don't aim right at it.
Right.
You're lobbing it.
Yep.
You're lobbing it. Wow, that's like a movie.
Yeah, it was.
It's like a movie. It's like I'm living a movie. Wow. I mean, you're Rambo, and you got your sidekick over there taking care of it.
So, I'm sorry.
No, so that was the other thing. You were talking about my stature and everything else. So uniform wise, the body armor plates, the 2 plates, because you have one in the front and one in the back for the vest that you're wearing. See, what is that? 10.5, 12 pounds.
12 pounds per
about
plate.
12 pounds per plate. So that's 24. The rifle weighs, when the rifle's empty without a mag, it weighs about 8.2, I think. That's just the rifle itself. And then
all your ammunition.
All my ammunition. You have to have
Kevlar
seven magazines on you at all times. Okay.
210 rounds.
Yep. And so just to give you an idea, like I said, I am a short gal. So when we were out doing night fire, we're in, where was I at? Fort Campbell.
Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Yeah, it was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, when we were doing our train up and everything else. And we're out there in the snow doing night fire.
Training for Iraq.
Okay. So you're talking about training chaos. But we're out there, we're laying in the snow and we're firing our rifles and everything else. And one girl started complaining. And I was like, I couldn't remember her name. And I said, hey, is that so-and-so? And they're like, yeah. Well, this is Sergeant Greenwell. I don't know what you're complaining about because I'm shorter than you and I'm older than you. So you just need to suck it up and drive on, because if I'm doing this, you can do it too. So
was it really that nice? Was it really that nice, or were there some
that was close
in there?
That was as close as I can get.
Okay.
This way you don't have to edit it. Okay. I'm trying to be nice.
No, I appreciate that actually, because we did have a guest on where it took me a week.
We've got people today that have no idea what our country really is all about. Why the freedoms that we enjoy are so integral to a free and productive society. And the example I want to use is even when my kids were in school, like in the 90s, I was in the school one day. I did a lot of school programs on my own and through the military because I was a United States Army recruiter at the time. But I walked in and I said, hey, so what grade, we used to get our flag, class around the 6th grade. And I said, what grades do they do the flag class? They said, well, we don't do the flag class anymore. I was like, wait a minute, that's mandated. That's in law. It's mandated by law that you conduct, this instruction to better inform young minds as to why, the flag means so much and everything behind it. And they said, well, yeah, it is law, but all we have to do is send up a memorandum stating that we don't have the resources at the time to do it. So it just became standard to them to just, we don't have to do this, so we're not going to. And that was one of the things. So I said, well, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm your resource. I'll come in, I'll do the flag class. Yeah. It allowed me another avenue in to meet students and things like that. So it was a little self-serving in that respect, but in the same regards, it was playing to something I firmly believed in. And when you can't articulate to someone outside of the United States why the United States is so great, other than, we got free Wi-Fi and our social systems take care of us from cradle to grave. No, those are not the right things about the United States of America.
Right.
So that was to me more important than anything else. And I know that may seem a little esoteric as an internal threat, but the more people that don't realize that are the people that are going to be voters in the future and making decisions based upon what I think is not faulty information, the lack of information. You know what? You have to step outside of you kind of got to step out of your zone every once in a while and try and take an external look and see, am I going the right direction? And if I don't think I am, what am I missing here? And that's why knowledge is key. And that's why, doing those things that you get out there and you engage with people. There's one other thing I want to cover really quick. Yeah. There was one other moment during Panama, during the invasion.
Yeah.
So December 19th was our prep day. December 20th, midnight was the actual invasion. It was 3 days later. At that point, I had gotten maybe 10 or 15 minutes of sleep here and there over 3 days. So obviously that takes a huge toll. So they were starting to rotate platoons off of their missions and back in and to go guard the ammunition supply point. So the ammunition supply point is where they bring in all the munitions they're going to need to resupply soldiers with. So buddy of mine and we are just dog tired. So we go lay down. We found some pallet plastic in between two pallets. And he laid on one side, I laid on the other, and we were out. And we were supposed to have guard shift. I think I had 2 a.m. and he had like 2:30 or something like that. So we were half-hour guard shift throughout the night. And the next morning when the sun woke me up, I'm like, oh no, we missed guard shift. We missed guard shift. I was like, oh, we are in so much trouble. And so we get up and we're walking around. We can't find anybody. Oh. No one from our platoon. No one that we're like, this is the Twilight Zone. Where did everybody go? And that's when my platoon sergeant came out of the jungle on the one side and was like, where the blank have you been? It's like, right here. You didn't hear the mortar rounds last night? The what? We were both like, no, didn't hear anything. So mortar rounds had hit, and they didn't hit that close. They were probably about 500 meters away, about half a kilometer away where they hit. But then I looked back and looked at the two pallets that I'm sleeping in between. One is high explosives, and the other pallet were artillery rounds.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, we would have been missed. We would.
You lucky dumb kid.
Oh yeah, we would have been red mist. That's all it would have been left of us. They wouldn't have been able to find anything. And that was the other moment that I went, wow, okay,
this is real.